and welcome back, and loads to get through in this video. So moving straight on to driver customization in this version 1.5.4. The profile still looks exactly the same. I'm not sure whether this is being added or not. Just looking at your stats, so you can look over all your race stats from each circuit and how you've performed. But I'm sure this driver profile is definitely new, customizing the driver himself. I definitely didn't think I'd come across this before. So a few things to look over here. Obviously you can change the helmet and visor colours, and then you can move on to looking at the leather outfit, the overalls I suppose, and then moving on to the gloves. And obviously you can do this for the whole team that you would use doing a 24-hour race. Just using my brother there, Tim. So yeah, moving on, that's the driver customization, and a welcome ad, I think. Moving to the special events page, this looks totally different, and in my opinion it looks much better. It's nice to be able to look over just sort of everything. I suppose it's still on one screen, but it just looks better how it changes through the cars and the leaderboards. And you can also look at the previous events. Quite why we can see all these events as previous events, because they're sort of yet to come on console. This is what's been on PC, I believe, from season 1 through to season 5 or season 6 so far. So hopefully we'll have all these events to come. If you try moving to one of them and just selecting the event, it just continues to load. Obviously it shows you the car in the background, but obviously the leaderboard it's going to load it's not there, so it's just not going to load it up, because obviously we've still yet to do all these events. So moving on to the controls, the steering scale's been added, but there's still no addition of pedal or wheel calibration for those that are struggling on wheels that need pedals calibrating. But I'll run over this in a little bit more detail as the video progresses, something we'll look on shortly. But moving to the GT4, that little dangling carrot there, that it is coming, and obviously if you try to select it, it'll send you to a page that doesn't exist because it's not available just yet. But you can get in some of these cars. It seems like the BMW is the only one that seems to offer this camera view, but it is nice to see all the cars, just being able to, you can look around them all, just have a look at them in the garage I suppose. But it's nice to see the additions that are going to be added, although we've seen all this on an earlier PC video that I did about all the forthcoming cars to the GT4 series, but it's still nice to actually see them in the garage. And the Maserati I think looks very long for some reason, but yeah, I do like the look of the Porsche. Definitely a car I'll probably spend a bit more time in than others, I think. But yeah, moving on, I went into adding a custom livery to the Lexus. I'm not sure you could add a custom livery before, but I spent all the time trying to add a new livery and doing all the paint adjustments. But you seem to be able to change the design, but it doesn't seem possible to change any of the colouring for some reason. So quite why it gives you the option and then doesn't allow you to go any further is a bit weird for me. But yeah, did all the usual adjustments that you would do to try and make it your own, and then went to try and save it, and then lo and behold, there's still no further customizable slots available. So I think the maximum you can use is 6 slots, which is ridiculous considering how many cars there is. You're not just going to want to stay on the same car. So I just thought I'd leave this loading screen in so you can see that it is version 5.4 or 1.5.4, but it is nice to see this little graphic in the middle. Obviously nothing's moving at this stage, but it's very nice to see that. Moving on to this setup menu, this is all changed totally, and I definitely lost a lot of setups during the update, something that I'll probably spend a lot more time doing. I don't think the game will progress much further than this, so hopefully I don't lose loads of setups again. But yeah, things definitely look a little bit different, and I'll be covering this setup a little bit further in my next video, which covers dampers from start to finish really. So moving on then, and keyboard support and seating position. Unfortunately, the keyboard support still hasn't been added back to the game, but you can still cycle through the MFD as it mentions there, using the insert button. The S button still kills the engine if you're using auto start, and the C button on the keyboard still cycles through all the views that were originally available. No additions there. Definitely going to the in-car view. This is a seating position that I had changed originally, which it has saved, but there's definitely less lag, and then you've got this little graphic in the middle of the screen as well to tell you that the pit limiter isn't on. The frame rate definitely feels a little bit smoother, but yeah, let's revisit this steering scale. And what it does is it reduces the amount of steering input that you're putting in really. If you actually reduce the scale by 50% and you go to turn the wheel, it's almost like you're having to turn the wheel a heck of a lot more to make the corner. Far more input required, so it's just like increasing the steering lock really. And obviously if you come back to the menu and go the other way, past the 100, which I would recommend you stay at, if you go to something like 150, it gets far more twitchy, far more sensitive, the steering wheel. So for each input that I'm putting into the wheel, it's almost well, it's not almost double, it's 50% more. But yeah, I definitely recommend still using all the steering locks and just leave the steering scale at 100. Just moving to look at some other bindings that I hoped would be there, would be possibly the seat adjustment, but it's not there. But yeah, moving to the tyre pressures, a total change. As I did mention, I thought this would happen. It's gone to 25 or 27.5 being the highest tyre pressure, and as we see it start to get a bit cooler, the tyre starts to deflate a little bit, and as we drop just below 27.1 into the 27s, you can see that centre segment just drops away to show that the tyre is slightly underinflated, and it continues to get worse obviously the longer you leave it. But originally this was 28.2 for console users, but now 27.5 to 27.1. Yep, the frame rate for me, it does look a tiny bit smoother. I've watched a few replays and definitely looks a tiny bit different. But let's move on to the data. I went over this in a recent video and it's still no change here. All the sector times are still your personal bests, and they don't add up to the time that's on the leaderboard. Moving back to this graphic that we can see when we're in the pits, you can cycle through all the cars that are driving around, but you can also find yourself that nice little gap that you want to pull out into, so you can see the last car just passing the pits there, and then at that point you could probably decide to exit the pit into a nice bit of clean air to get your lap in. But yeah, moving back to this graphic, as you can see on the screen, we've got this little warning now that you need to engage the pit limiter, and as soon as you engage it and disengage it, that removes it from the screen, which is a nice touch, I think. Sometimes it's very hard to see on the dash whether the pit limiter is in or not, and using the keyboard again, you can use that to look left and right using 4 and 6 on the numerical keypad. So let's check out these headlights, and another little tip that I'll mention as we get further into the actual race. But yeah, I use the MFD on the left hand side to turn the lights on and off, and certainly a difference as you can see when you're in the pit lane. But for some reason at Zolder it doesn't give you the option to go to high beam. This is an option. It's called Enduro, something like that. It comes in, but it doesn't seem to give you that option. And as far as I'm concerned, the rear view mirror is still lacking detail, but we'll have a look at that further. I'll add a little bit of PC footage to the rear view mirror. But for me, obviously you've got the lighting around the circuit. There's maybe a little bit more lighting, but the lights just don't cast a light further ahead for me. I'd still want to be using the high beam as far as it's concerned, but I don't really worry about the visibility. But one little tip using the tyre pressures, just remember when you're changing onto a set of tyres, make sure you've got the same tyre pressure as the ones that you're using. You can see that in the left hand side, so make sure they're the same when you set off during your races. But again, let's look at this rear view mirror. You can see in the console version, and as we swap to the PC version, there's just so much more detail. Unless the car's literally touching your rear bumper on console, you cannot see it. So you're just sort of relying on the graphic really, or the timing window to see whether anyone's close or not. So yeah, definitely something that needs addressing still, I think. More detail required for the rear view mirror. But yeah, I don't particularly struggle driving at night. I'd definitely recommend driving in a darkened room if you are doing a night drive stint. It does add a little bit more to the immersion, and it does allow you to see a little bit more detail. As you can see, I'm driving around here without the lights on, and it brings up this amber sort of warning in the top left corner, and just tells you that you need to do something. So as you can see, just turning the lights on does make a bit of a difference, but it feels more to the side of the circuit rather than looking forward. But yeah, not as good as I thought it was going to be, the lighting update. But moving back to the tyres, as you can see as I'm driving round, you can see that the graphic on the right hand side, the tyre graphic, the tyres aren't quite hitting the temperature that I desired. So you can use this to your advantage, and you can just adjust the tyre pressures whilst you're on the move, so that when you do come into the pits, obviously using that same tyre pressure, it'll adjust again, and you can actually get the correct tyre pressures when you come in to do your pit stop. So something just to bear in mind. I'm just running through this pit stop strategy again. As you're approaching that pit box, just remember to put your finger on the engine cut button. I use the auto engine start, and you can use the button on the keyboard to stop the engine. So just as I come in to do my pit stop, as I apply the brake, I'm using the engine cut button, so as soon as I stop, the car gets lifted up onto its jacks and the work starts straight away. And even before the car's off its jacks, I've already pressed the engine start button on the keyboard, and then I've put my foot fully flat on the accelerator pedal and just holding them both. So as soon as the car is finished being worked on and it drops to the ground, you can start straight away and you're off out of the pit box. There's no time waiting for the engine to get started again. And as I mentioned before, just practice your pit exits and your outlap, just to carry as much speed as you can. But yeah, I'll let you enjoy a lap around Zolder at full speed. This was just during part of my race, so I'm still using quite a bit of fuel on board, and yeah, just getting to grips with how the car feels. Since the update, this setup did carry over quite nicely. I didn't have to spend any time changing the setup at all, so hopefully a lot of the other setups that I've created will run just as well on 1.5.4. If not, I guess it's back to the drawing boards for the setups, but as far as I'm concerned, it's just the tyre pressures that are going to need adjusting. I didn't particularly feel like the car handled in any way differently, but as far as the force feedback goes, I did feel that there's a tiny bit more detail through some of the slower corners, especially this one coming up. It just felt like there was more a sense of grip through some of the slower corners. Much easier to catch some of the slides, although I weren't particularly struggling before. The physics in Assetto Corsa Competizione feel so good. I really am struggling to go back to Project Cars 2 for the upcoming Logitech challenge, but I'm hoping to probably spend a week away from this game if I'm through to some of the quarterfinals. But yeah, managed to finish the trifecta challenge as part of this, getting the pole, fastest lap and finishing top of the leaderboard. And moving to that lap delta, it's all still exactly the same. You can't see any of the detail after the race. It doesn't show you any of your lap times at all. And obviously if you're wanting to watch the replay, the highlights, this is definitely a little option that you can do after the race. A pity you can't remove all the graphic from the screen, but it still looks like it's running quite nicely, I think, on my 1440p monitor. And it comes up with this little graphic down in the bottom right hand corner now, telling you, I suppose, why the footage is in the highlights. There's obviously a manoeuvre coming up. It does seem to have that on the screen for quite a long time, and some of the overtakes I think are overtakes that happen when you're in the pit. But yeah, I did press to save the highlights and the replay, but as per usual it's still not saving the highlights, and just 4 minutes of the replay. So moving on to all the multiplayer changes, and this is another area that's changed hugely. It gives you an option now to use a primary vehicle for racing in predominantly GT3 or mixed series, and you can obviously select this and set it as to the desired car, so you don't have to keep going back and changing it. You could pre-select the GT3 car that you would like to use in just GT3 races, and then you can go on to just choose whichever car you're going to be using. There is the options for the GT4s at the moment, but obviously you can't drive any of them obviously until that patch is released. But there are some nice liveries to look through. But yeah, moving back to the multiplayer screen, and there's numerous suggestions for other categories, Porsche Cup races, and then you've got the Lamborghini, I forget, Trofeo League, which is another one, so that car's the only one that's selected. But moving back to the board itself and being able to look down, for some reason there's this line across the selection as if you've already pre-selected one, and then as you move down the graphic sort of gets stuck on this red sort of highlighted section as you move down, so it's almost like you're copy and pasting the leaderboard, which is quite confusing when you're looking through trying to find one to choose as you sort of move up and down. It doesn't particularly work well, but once you've landed on one that you're wanting to take part in, you sort of click on it, it highlights the car on the left hand side, and then just press this connect. So yeah, I'll leave you with this little video at the end. Just a really good race I was having in a public lobby. Really good battles, and just managed to pit second place. I was absolutely over the moon with this, having battled with this guy from start to finish. But yeah, there's still lots to uncover within the new patch. Just trying to find out whether all the setups that I've previously previously created and then tested, just to see whether they do actually run well on the new version of the game. And I really would be interested to see if people's views of the force feedback, the wheels that you're using. Please leave a comment in the comment section, or in the comments in the description below, about the setup that you're using, if you're having issues still with your wheels, how the force feedback's changed. Quite a lot of people, one guy in particular, still having issues with his TMX Pro, although the TMX is working okay. Whether people are still having issues with the G29 and the G920, I'd definitely like to hear about that. But obviously there's a lot of sponsorship gone through Fanatec for this game, so that wheel's definitely performing. My wheel's definitely performing really well, the 2.5 base on Xbox. But yeah, if there's anything that you've found within the game since the patch, please do leave a mention in the video description. And yeah, thanks for watching, thanks for sticking with the channel. Please do visit SetSpace website. More setups will be coming on my behalf anyway for console users, and it'd be really nice to see people using the setups and just commenting on them as well. Obviously you can leave a donation as well if you feel inclined. But yeah, thanks for watching. Please do like and subscribe, and remember to hit that bell notification for more future updates, and get ready for the dampers video. That should be interesting. Thanks for watching. Ciao for now.